Web3 gives you a space to create your own avatar, where you can dress up as your favorite superhero and walk around in the virtual spaces. However, once you log out of the virtual world, there are some real-life superheroes around you, your IT heroes, who help you manage and fix your PCs remotely. Be it something as simple as being unable to log into your mail, or something as complex as a ransomware attack. Intel vPro makes it easier for these real-life heroes to remotely ensure that your PC remains safe and well-managed, even if you're outside the firewall. Intel vPro, built for business. Hi, welcome to Future Proofing. I'm your host Ekalavya Bhattacharya, and this show is presented by Intel vPro, built for business. In this show, we talk about Web3, blockchain, metaverse, and how these technologies will have an impact on different industries, right? Today's episode, we talk about sustainability. Is blockchain technology sustainable? What are these mining costs? What is proof of work, proof of stake? Can blockchain help in sustainability projects? What about climate crisis, and can Web3 solve that? Joining me today is India's water girl, maturity far beyond her age and a love for technology too. See you on the other side of this quick Intel vPro break in conversation with Garvita Gulhati.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashton is joined by actress Kubra Seth. They talk about her newly launched book, Open Book, Not Quite a Memoir. On Cider Says It's Cock and Bull, Cider, Sriram, Puneet and Ayushi talk about Kerala becoming the first state to have its own internet service. On Naan Curry, Sadaf and Archit talk to UK-based chef Chetan Sharma on how Indian food is perceived in Britain. On A Niche Thing, Anish talks to Jude, CEO and founder of the Revolver Club. They discuss hi-fi systems and vinyl collections. And on Ikka Dukka Economy, Abhinav talks to renowned cyber lawyer Dr. Pawan Duggal. They discuss how to safeguard one's plastic money. Once again, I'd like to remind you all that we got some exciting merchandise out there for you guys. Go to the IVM Podcast website and click on the shop tab and check out our first collection of t-shirts. Also, do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We're also on YouTube. Do remember to check out a bunch of our channels over there. And also remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please tell a friend. Word of mouth is very, very helpful for spreading the word. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, both Lifestyle, Small Case, Capgemini, and Intel vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back and in conversation with India's water girl, Garvita Gulhati. Welcome, Garvita. How's it going?
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Eka. Great to be here and very excited for our conversation. It's very different from any other conversation I've had before, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Same here. Garvita, let's get started, right? If someone Googles you, the term India's water girl comes up, right? So tell us a little more about that. You're still in your early 20s. You've been involved in water conservation for a long time already. Just tell us quickly a little about your journey.
My journey started almost 7 years ago when I was 15 and deeply impacted by India's water crisis. As a young person, I started seeing the problems around me and I really wanted to do something about it. Unfortunately, didn't know where to start. And that's when I learned about water getting wasted in restaurants. And for me, that was sort of the pivot and the moving point that this is where I can make a difference. And this is where I need to go and, start doing my bit. And that's where the journey began. And ever since, I founded Why Waste, which is a nonprofit, completely youth-led, focused on building solutions to help individuals become a part of the water crisis, become a part of solving the water crisis. And our goal is to help empower every person to believe that and know that they can contribute towards making this change. We do it by building and creating simple tools and capabilities for them, including an app, a book, etc.
That's so fascinating, Garvita. And you've been doing all this stuff for a while, right? What got you inspired within this, of course, and a little more about, this is a question which I ask all our guests, right? Garvita, what is your first memory of the internet? And probably was it Web 1, Web 2? And how has it evolved?
And I think I love the fact that you asked me about my first memory of the internet, right? when I started out as a change maker, I realized the reason I knew that these problems existed was because of the internet. It's because I was able to read about them online, right? Obviously, if I didn't have access to that information, I would have maybe looked at a newspaper and found out, and that's a big maybe because I don't know if I really even read newspapers back then, or it was a couple of those articles that your parents would make you read. But it was because of the information that I got to explore and learn about online that pushed me towards wanting to do something about the water crisis, right? I was reading about farmers who were taking their lives due to the lack of access to water, and women and girls who are walking miles just to get a glass of water that we often get without even moving a finger. So that's really about how it all started and me just learning about the water crisis. My first memory of the internet, I think I was probably not. I wouldn't say born into it. That it doesn't. Like, I didn't get the access to internet when I was like 2 or 3, which most kids today have.
Today
I probably
it's completely different.
It's completely different. I think for me it was I have a very vague memory of our school computer lab, and then there was this small secret room where the computers in that particular room had access to the internet, and if you were like a teacher's favorite or like one of the smart kids, you would get access to go to that room and use the internet. And that could be like searching for pictures for like a class project or something like that. But it was very few people who had access to it. And then I think at the home level, my first memory would be I know I've probably had access to it before, but like what I can really remember is maybe creating like our first Facebook account in 6th or 7th grade.
Were people allowed at that age? I think Facebook had some rules, right? Like you had to be 13 or 15.
Yeah, I left. I know I left in like 6 months, and then my friends stayed on. But that I do have a memory of, or maybe it was Google Hangouts. Or we didn't have Google Meet back then for sure. I think Hangouts was also called something else. And there was this social media called Google Plus.
Yes.
I think that's what we used to use.
This was around 2006, 2008. Google was there. Then Google Wave also came in. But
I have no memory of that.
Garvita, a little more, right? Like tell me like your interest in Web3 before we dive into sustainability, etc. How did you get interested in Web3? You've told me like you love technology, etc. And of course, we'll talk a little more about that. But like you just described Facebook, etc. Right? And probably that was already Web 2.0. And you've probably seen Web 3.0 also come in, right? So tell us a little more about probably your Web3 experience and what's got you really excited about technology in this space.
So I think technology is something that's excited me for a very long time. When I had to sort of make the decision of what to study for an undergrad, it took me a while, but I came to realize that a bachelor's in technology is what I wanted, simply because of the wide base that it gives you and understanding that it gives you of the world. And I think the second thing is I was already someone who was working in the environmental space. I had an inkling that in the future, technology is going to help us, solve some of the most pressing issues that we face. Not not just because technology is such a powerful, ecosystem in itself, but more because it has the capability and it is the innovation that everyone is leading by, and it is a product that everyone is consuming. And so if everyone is consuming it and you want everyone to change, you have to do it via technology. And that's what led to me wanting to learn and understand more about the ecosystem and, dive into doing a degree in technology. And then I think being in an engineering school, I was going to say environment school, being in an engineering school, you are continuously pushed to learn more, to sort of dig deeper into what's happening. You're continually updated about what's going on. And I have some incredible friends who actually, code full-time in blockchain and who I go to and jam with on crazy ideas, and they teach me a lot of stuff. And so I think they keep me moving and keep me excited about the ecosystem. I also, explore a lot of it myself. I became
Okay.
very intrigued, perhaps because I became very intrigued with blockchain, perhaps because of crypto. But I think I very quickly segued into, what blockchain is in itself and the power that it holds. Because everything that I learned, I'm looking for
Yeah.
like the environmental aspect of it. So I very quickly segued into the power that it holds and, helping build a more sustainable world.
But that's the biggest problem of, say, and in our podcast we've spoken about how blockchain will have an impact on sports, on media. We're going to have a healthcare episode on gaming, but we've never really explained those slight technology terms which comes with the blockchain and, say, crypto, right? Like mining, like proof of work, like proof of stake. And why I'm bringing this up right at the top is the biggest problem with, say, blockchain technology and sustainability is the question where people are like, blockchain technology in general is not sustainable. So forget about talking about how it can help in sustainability. Tell us a little more about that problem, right?
So actually, as you were mentioning that, I recollected why I started reading more and more about cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and the entire process of it. Every time that I would talk to someone very excitedly about blockchain, crypto, they would come and tell me, "You're an environmentalist, right? Do you know the environmental impact of all of this?" And that's when I started digging deeper into the process of crypto mining. I haven't personally done it, but I've learned from friends who actually have done it.
Let's jam
The
about that,
process
right?
yeah.
Sure.
So typically what I came to learn is the entire process of Bitcoin mining consumes a lot of energy, right?
Okay.
The entire process from let's say, finding a place for yourself in the ecosystem to actually getting your specific block, right? So what happens is there are multiple blocks in the system, and each of those blocks needs to be verified, especially when a new block enters the chain. And to verify those, there is an ecosystem of miners.
Okay.
These miners are solving mathematical equations
Okay.
in order to add that particular block to your network or your node. And once that, whichever miner is able to solve the equation quickest, which again requires very, very high energy systems because they're solving very complex mathematical equations.
Okay.
Whoever is able to arrive at it the quickest is the one who is rewarded.
Okay, so
And that
let me
is-
try to. Okay, go ahead.
and that's typically that's how you verify every block on
Okay.
the ecosystem.
Or
right?
validate
Because
every transaction, right?
Validate exactly.
So let me try to break it down in simple words, and then we can jam about why is it a great problem for energy, right? So
Yeah.
basically, to validate or to mint a token or a coin or a block,
Exactly.
what happens is there is a cryptographical problem which is put out, and the computer, which is the fastest in solving that, gets to validate that transaction, and hence that person gets paid in the currency of that blockchain. Now the
Correct.
problem which has happened is people have realized that the faster and the bigger processors and computers you have, the chance of you actually being able to solve this cryptographic problem is higher. Hence,
Exactly.
the chance of you trying to make money is higher. So what has happened is people have invested in, there are server farms which people talk about, and you can just Google it, like if you're listening. And there are server farms of these mining operations. Heavy duty energy, electricity is getting consumed, and at the same time you need coolers running to keep
Exactly.
so that if you and me do this at home, our computers will get burnt to a crisp, right? So this was a very big problem, right?
Yes, exactly. Now, there is a second concept that actually helps make this entire process a lot more sustainable. That's called the proof of stake, where instead of competing for, verifying that particular block, someone is assigned the process of verifying it. So all of the energy that was spent by all of the other miners to actually get to that point is now not being done. There is
Can
one
be
single
avoided,
person.
right?
Exactly.
So what Garvita was just talking about proof of stake. So what proof of stake basically is that instead of a proof of work concept where a cryptographic problem is given out and someone has to solve it and compete it, and there's energy wastage happening at every level, over here in proof of stake, where some of the blockchain platforms have evolved to, it's if you are already invested a little into the whole entire blockchain, the chances that you will get to validate that particular transaction is higher, right? And what happens is, since you're already invested in the blockchain, a little bit of your tokens, currency, etc. is staked aside. So it basically says that you will probably not validate an incorrect transaction, right? Yeah. So what basically happens is multiple people are no longer fighting to earn a few bitcoins or a few ethers or a few Solana. It basically gets balanced out amidst people who are already in that blockchain. Now, of course, both these have its problems and solutions, right? Where someone says it's decentral, it's not truly decentral, because in proof of stake, if someone has more, has staked more amount of coins into the system, their chances are a little higher. So that's why we are seeing some evolution over there with different blockchains having different rules. And that is fine. But Garvita, the core of this problem is, right, there's a lot of energy which is getting consumed, right? Like, and how much is this energy, right? And what's the way forward?
So if I have to sort of put a little bit of perspective to it, to validate one transaction, it could consume as much energy as 31 households in the United States use in a day.
And how many transactions are happening in a day?
More than like millions, right?
Crazy.
So yeah, it's insane. And so when you sort of zoom out and look at it from that perspective, it's high on energy, right? And when I think about the future of technology, cannot or should not compromise on the ecology, especially in a situation, in a scenario, and in a world where we're trying to build more and more for sustainability. Though there is another call out that I'd like to mention, which is of course, there's your proof of work and proof of stake difference that creates a lot of difference in terms of the energy consumed. There are also a lot of different blockchain networks and ecosystems that are trying to resort to more renewable energies in order to power their computers and their coolers. So this could be using hydroelectricity, it could be using wind energy, solar energy, etc. And the goal is to do it in a sustainable way. So
give us some examples. So give us some examples. Who's doing what? Is Polygon up to something? Is Microsoft doing something? Are you aware of something? Because recently I think Polygon had their summit about green energy, and what I read was basically everyone's realizing that it's a problem, but they are offsetting their carbon credits, right? Like, and what you are probably speaking about is an evolved blockchain where in the whole mining process, or in proof of stake where people say forging or minting process, renewable energy is probably being used, right? So while that will eventually, of course, take a little bit of time, tell me, like, do you know some cool stuff which is happening in the space of some companies which are already in it, are realizing it's really taking up a lot of energy, and what are some measures which some big companies are taking in the space, right?
Absolutely. So a couple of companies are completely resorting all of their, mining activity to be driven by sustainable energy. So that's going to be renewable energy, right? Here you have solar, you have wind, and depending on the ecosystem or the geography of the place, they try to resort to what would best, perhaps work there. There are in fact a lot of crypto coins also that have come out that say and state that they are specifically built on renewable energies, and so that gives them this unique perspective and this unique USP to get people to buy those coins. On the other hand, there are a lot of companies, like you mentioned, Polygon, Microsoft, etc., who are looking at offsetting the the energy that gets consumed in the process of mining, right? And that could be either via carbon capture, that could be via growing trees, because that's one of the most in interesting ways and exciting ways in helping restore ecology, capture carbon. It can be in terms of so there again, there to help them do this, there are multiple organizations that focus on carbon neutralization. So it's like multiple parts of the ecosystem really coming together to push progress, to push technology, while also pushing for doing it in a more sustainable manner.
So you, of course, believe that eventually blockchain technology can become sustainable in general. Now, let's talk a little about how this problem can probably get solved, and also a little more about how, when blockchain is finally sustainable, how can it also affect and help in other sustainability projects, right? And one of the main things where I see it really helping is the power grid system, right? Like our like the way power gets distributed, collected, stored is almost 120 years technology, and it's hardly seen any evolution when it comes to software actually trying to help it, right? And we are reading about like devices not being able to communicate to each other. Hence, there's a lot of energy efficiency which is lost. So, any thoughts on how basically blockchain can actually help in like better energy efficiency?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I'm actually going to take a step back and break
Sure.
this down a little bit,
Of
right?
course.
Now, there's multiple chunks that we can in which we sort of are either consuming energy or are impacting the planet and the environment. This can come either from the producing of energy itself, the producing of goods, or even the supply of goods. Companies are asked to measure their carbon credits, which is the amount of carbon that they are probably emitting, and then how much they're able to offset out of that. Second, there is a lot of loss of energy in the supply chain process, right? So when you sort of see the current ecosystem of energy is not just being formed and then reaching your home from the next door, right? It travels miles and miles to reach you. Along that process, there is a lot of loss of energy, which could be due to environmental factors. It could be due to, and by environmental, I'm saying things like weather conditions, etc. There could be a loss of energy due to simply older technology being consumed, which is what you were talking about. Now, what blockchain helps us do here is really go directly to the root, understand the process at each stage, because at every stage it is being recorded, and that record is permanent, it is not changing, and it is transparent and visible to everyone in the ecosystem. So that really allows you to dig deep and understand where the problems are occurring, and then allows you to make it more efficient, more quickly, and in a more sustainable manner.
Okay, that's interesting. So you slightly mentioned, right, in the whole process, and that reminds me of supply chain management, right? And one of the fields where I think blockchain technology can really help is supply chain management, right? And apart from supply chain management in probably in the capitalist side of the world, let's keep that aside. But let's break it down to basic like agriculture is very important in our country, right? And so tell us a little more, right? Like how can a basic example being like that of a farmer, right? Like how can actual blockchain technology probably in India actually make farming sustainable for a farmer in a small village? And what's the cascading effect of something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine that there's a farmer in a village in India, right? And he is producing a particular crop. Now, for him to be able to sell that crop, there is a bulk wholesaler who comes to him, and he takes it from him either at a fixed price or at a specific price, right? But unfortunately, the farmer might not have as much negotiating power as he would have hoped, he or she would have hoped. And then, of course, then that wholesaler sells it farther, and then eventually it probably reaches us at some point or the other. Versus imagine if this entire ecosystem was present on a blockchain, right?
Okay.
You would know who is at which level, who has grown the crop that you're consuming, who has who are the different middlemen via whom it's coming, and how it's finally reaching your home. And by how it's reaching your home, it's not just the people via which it's reaching your home, even the transportation that was experienced by that particular crop. You actually know literally step by step exactly how it has come to you, and that enables you to do two things, right? One, it helps you to perhaps help better the farmer, their
Yeah.
economic value of the product, right? Because at the end of the day, if you know where it's coming from, there's a more direct tangibility for you to support that particular farmer. The second thing is for yourself, you better know the process that the food that you're eating has gone through, right? And in a
Sure.
world where like organic food, where more sustainably sourced and produced food is something that we are looking for, and we can also talk about it not just in the farming ecosystem, but there's of course there's agriculture, but there's also aquaculture, where there's a lot of talk about
Sustainable
sustainable
fishing, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so you also are aware, and you are assured that the food that you are consuming has come from a sustainable source, because a lot of people who are trying to be sustainable, they follow what is written on the packaging of the food that they purchase.
So wait a minute. So you're basically saying that blockchain technology is a solution to greenwashing, right? So you're basically saying if a lot of companies are maybe having green bottles and writing on their packaging saying that we're completely sustainable, organic, etc., and you're hoping that consumers are blindly believing it, you're saying that blockchain technology can actually make this a little verifiable, right?
Exactly. It can make it verifiable for you as a consumer, as well as in many places also for the companies itself. So a lot of companies also today are not fully, maybe not, there are a few people who would be aware, but not everyone even there is aware of where the products that they are selling are coming from, right? So it helps you validate yourself as an organization, and it also helps a customer validate what they're consuming, because in a world where we are consciously trying to eat more sustainably, we're trying to eat food that is more sustainably sourced and produced, all our efforts go to waste when we actually don't know the real source of it, and we're just going with what we see. Versus on a blockchain, you will go to the root and you will know exactly where it came from,
And that will also help in making the entire process a little more efficient, right? Like where a particular vegetable is getting wasted, is it happening at a warehouse? Because if everything, like leveraging the blockchain's ledger aspect of it, right? Like if every action is actually recorded, I'm sure food supply chain management will become far more efficient, right? Just because of being able to understand where wastage is happening, right? And probably
Exactly. In fact, when you talk about food supply chain management, right? And I'll just quickly throw a little bit light on supply chain management. In businesses, there are multiple scopes of emission count, right? It's called the ESG scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And usually supply chain management comes into scope 3, and it is something that is not talked about enough or not shared enough. And what happens is, because we aren't aware of the scope 3 emissions, which is where you have your supply chains, your manufacturing, etc., it's obviously a huge consumer of energy, right? As someone who works in water, just to sort of give a little perspective on energy consumption, right? To manufacture a pair of jeans, it can take like up to 4,000 liters of water. It can take up to 30,000 liters of water to like manufacture your car. And I'm just talking about water. There's multiple other resources and energies that go into producing every single product that we consume today. But unfortunately, we're simply and blissfully unaware of it. And it's honestly not our fault, but now it is our duty to sort of take that first step and learn about it. And what blockchain can actually do is enable you to learn about it, right? It can enable you to learn about the process that your food has taken to reach your table. It can enable you to learn about the process that your clothes have taken to sort of reach your backs. That is one aspect of it, right? The second aspect of it is actually helping companies become more sustainable. Because a lot of times, even they don't have full power to, the various suppliers in the ecosystem that are enabling the transportation, the transition, and the transaction of their products. But if they have that level of visibility and they have the understanding that, okay, if I tweak this part of the system, I can be actually saving thousands of, liters of water, or I can be saving, hundreds of kilowatts of energy. It can be a game changer.
On that note, Garvita, we'll quickly jump to the segment which we do on a show. It's called Eka's Commandments for Future Proofing. Web 2.0 brought social media where it was possible to interact with each other via comments, GIFs, photos, and videos. And this brought the whole world a little closer. Web 3 is all set to take things one major step forward. People can now have their virtual avatars hang out with each other, attend digital offices, virtual classrooms, online concerts, etc. Work from home. But you can now even party from home. Recently, someone in India held a wedding on the metaverse, attended by 500 guests. Talking of doing things virtually, there has been one platform that has been helping IT departments all over the world help their users remain safe and manage their PC while they work from home. I'm talking about Intel's vPro line of processors. Intel vPro provides modern management options to remotely discover, repair, and help protect PCs in your entire organization, which will help simplify support and improve user experience. Intel vPro, built for business. Welcome back in conversation with the fascinating Garvita Gulhati. Garvita, before this, we were speaking about how blockchain can actually help us in a lot of different fields. And I wanted to talk about two specific things, right? And your thoughts on that. One is how can blockchain technology help us in the world of recycling? And also, we spoke a little about transparency, right? And we can probably dive into this a little now, a little later. And transparency, right? Like we see so many people working in the space of making the world a better place, right? And so many NGOs raise a lot of funds, right? But there's always this feeling which a lot of people, masses have, that is this money actually going to be utilized the way it's said it's going to be, right? And what happened with that Elon Musk world food problem issue also, right? Where he said, let's make it transparent. So I wanted to know your thoughts on that, right? Like, can blockchain help with transparency? And also, does everyone want transparency in this space, or people are happy not to? Otherwise, how will they make money, right? So your thoughts on that?
Oh, man. Okay. So, a couple of thoughts around that, right? What is the USP of blockchain as a technology? One, it's immutable, right? It does not move. Once something is on the network, it stays there forever. So it's not going to be changed. It's not going to go. Second,
you can't change the past, basically.
You can't change the past.
That's immutability, right?
And not just that, you can always see the past. That's very important. I think that's what sort of ties that initial network together.
An archival record of whatever's happened. True.
Exactly. Second, it is accessible by everyone. So everyone can see that, right? Again, that's a very important. It's not just an archival record; it's an archival record that's observable by every single individual who's a part of that ecosystem, right? And the third thing is that it's a democratized ecosystem. There's not one person who's choosing what goes where, but it's a network of people who are enabling the access and the visibility and the growth of that particular ecosystem. And so these sort of USPs, and there's a lot more, right? But these are three that stand out to me specifically. I think these are what gives it a very powerful leverage in the climate ecosystem and in the sustainability ecosystem to actually enable change at scale, right? Let's take, for example, the Paris Agreement that was signed in 2015. There was a unanimous vote of countries from around the world who were present at the Paris Climate Convention. And what they did together was honestly historical, because signing a treaty of that magnitude was perhaps never really seen in the past, right?
True, yeah,
especially
exactly.
by so many countries coming together. And the commitments that they made were obviously at another level, right? And they require a lot of tangible action and a lot of verifiability that these actions are actually happening and are taking place. Because eventually, we all know, right, if we reach 2 degrees Celsius of warming, it's going to be catastrophic. We're very close to 1.5 already, and we're seeing the problems that are currently happening literally as we speak around the world. I mean, I was looking at this image today morning of people in a train in, I think, Italy, and they're just looking at, was it Italy or some other? I don't want to get the country wrong, but it was a part of Europe, and they were just traveling in their train, and everyone was wildly fascinated by the wildfires around them, and it's so sad that something like that could become a norm, right? But to not stray too much into my climate self, coming back to...
No, we'll talk about climate a little more in a while. But yeah. So tell me about the transparency aspect of it, right? So because of the agreement, because of the Paris Agreement.
Now today, what blockchain has the capability of doing with the Paris Agreement is incredible, right? If, let's say, for example, everything and every move that these countries are making towards climate, whether it's the amount that they commit or the actions that they take, everything gets recorded on a blockchain ledger. And what that enables globally people to do is to help each other point out that this might work well and this might not. It helps people to say that we need more action here, or we can learn from your actions in this place and really implement it somewhere else. It also increases accountability. So overall, what it's really doing is fast pacing. It's, bringing that validity that was absent, and it's allowing all of us to be a part of that change at once. And finally, of course, it's ensuring that, we're collectively all moving towards preventing 2 degrees Celsius of warming. And there's just not, it's not just, few people who are taking the required action.
So Garvita, what you said, of course, I'm a fan, right, of the technology. But what you said and what we're discussing is a little theoretical, right? Do you see this actually happening? Are there some DAOs or dApps in place which are actually helping with transparency in projects, right? Or and is that a trend which is definitely going to happen? Or like many people say, right, like NGOs, some NGOs are a front, and and a lot of people don't like to talk about it, and I wanted to, because people say it's a front, money gets siphoned off, no one actually knows what is happening. Some people will sign agreements, it's great PR, you get lauded on Twitter saying, these companies are doing so well, etc. But this level of transparency which blockchain can bring to the table, are people ready for it? Is it happening? Do you know some examples where people are open to it and saying, Garvita, like it's like opening up your accounts book, right? And keeping it, opening your accounts and keeping it open to the public. Do people want that?
That's a fascinating question again. It's highly variable, right? But my 2 cents in it is very simple, that if you actually are able to make the system more transparent, you need to realize that you'll have a lot more contributors, and you're going to enable that change that you want to see faster. Because today we actually are seeing a lot of backlash within the ecosystem simply because of, how perhaps funds have been used in the past. But if we are actually able to make that transparent, what we will see is a lot more people entering and supporting the ecosystem, right? We're going to see a lot more people contributing to push us to that change faster. One thing that gets missed out in the whole dialogue of climate very often when we talk about, the kind of change that we bring and all of it, is the money required to make that change, right? It can't just simply happen by actions or innovations or technologies. Enabling all of these requires funding at scale, and to give trust to those who are able to, or those who want to also, I would say, contribute to these networks, but are just not able to push themselves into it because they're not sure about how their money is going to be consumed. Blockchain can actually allow you, right? So let's say, for example, I donate 200 rupees, right, towards a certain cause. From the moment the money hits that bank account, right, it hits the bank account of the organization I want to support. I can actually see how that money was used by that particular organization. I can see where it was used. I can see the impact of it, and I can see the results of it. all of that when it's all on a blockchain, and that's going to motivate me to give more, versus if I gave that 200 rupees and now I have no idea what happened with my money, right? If I have no idea what happened, I won't be as motivated to give more. When I see that impact happening in front of my eyes, I'm going to want to give more. And the second thing that it does is really, and this I speak from really an activist lens, right? It really helps people empathize more with the problem, right? A huge issue that we face today is people not empathizing enough with issues around us, sometimes just giving money without actually, caring enough or knowing about the change that's happening. And second, not putting in enough effort to learn about the change that is happening that could, in a lot of ways also help them change their lifestyles for the better. So it also does that, right? It gives you that transparent vision and it allows you to become more a part of that change, and so kind of, motivates you to also want to do, continue to do more.
That's maturity far beyond your age, Garvita. But that's such a fascinating thing, and I agree completely. Tell me a little more about recycling, right? Like I asked that, and I know and why I'm asking that, for a lot of people, their first step into, say, a sustainable world, life, their own being is recycling, right? And there's some exciting examples. I was reading about Recycle to Coin and some other companies which are trying to accelerate this whole recycling business using blockchain technology. So anything interesting happening in that space?
Yes, of course. I think recycling, so there's, the 3 R's that we've been learning since we were kids, right? Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Now, unfortunately, because we've already used so much product, we need to recycle it, right? Reduce, of course, we need to first reuse it, and then eventually, of course, recycle it before then finally reducing our consumption. But coming to recycling and its implications on blockchain, right? What happens is a lot of times you tend to give something to a recycling unit or a recycling plant, but you don't know what's really happening with that product in the end, right? There's not enough availability of information and data. Very often it can be used for absolutely the right reasons, right? But very often it can also be not really reaching where you want it to and just going back to a dump yard. So for you to know the right places to send it to, right? And for you to know that this particular unit, company, organization is going to ensure that my waste actually gets, they say create wealth from waste, right? Which is typically use it to build back a better world, to create something new that can help the world, right? I want to give it to companies and organizations that will create that environmental wealth out of my waste, right? It's not enough to know only from a backseat what's going to happen with my waste, but it's very important for me to dig deep and know exactly what is happening with my waste, right? It could be, let's say, for example, I want to recycle a bunch of glass bottles that I have. One of the typical ways of recycling it is, the glass bottle gets, I'm not an expert at this, but so just putting that out there, but my basic understanding is, bottles are, crushed and shattered, and then you create sand out of it again, and then that sand allows you to create new bottles again. And in the process, you're kind of reusing the bottle in some manner. You are, it's hygienic because you're not just, washing the bottle and then cleaning it and using it, and you're creating a new product in itself. So that allows you to use the same raw material to create a new product. And it also tells you the energy impact that goes into that entire process, which is also very important and which is often missed out. And visibility to something like that can actually really change the gears of our consumption and consumer behavior. So blockchain, again, in recycling and in that particular ecosystem, allows you to know the entirety of the life cycle of your product. And when your vision is just simply opened to what is happening to something that I consumed and the amount of energy that it takes to create and then, dispose of that product, you're going to want to make some changes in life.
True, and what you were just, while you were answering that, a thought was coming in my head, right? Like, as it becomes more trackable, and apart from making the entire process efficient, once we start getting to know where are these carbon credits, etc. I'm sure governments can actually get the carbon tax implemented far better, right? Because now finally when a product is being made, the amount of effort, the amount of wastage, etc., linked to it, right? And probably making people aware of this, and then people will also know that like you're paying a specific carbon tax for that, and that I see a huge impact of that in the future of all products, right, which are bought.
Yeah.
And that's something.
Actually, I'm so excited. I'm so excited that you said carbon tax, and I want to, just maybe dive a little deeper into,
please, like for
sharing,
those
sharing
sure.
some thoughts around it, right? So every product that we consume comes with a price tag, right? There is a specific amount that we have to pay to obtain it. That is the money that we give. But every product has so many hidden costs to it, right? That is the cost to the environment. They say that the environment is the economy. Today, everything that is our economy, all of the money that we hold is because we have created and sold things that we have produced from the environment, right? And that's a huge cost that we have literally never accounted for. There is a cost that comes of water. There is a cost that comes of carbon, right? There is a cost that comes of the people who are actually who are behind the scenes spending time to manufacture these products, and there is also a lot of loss of their capabilities in the process. And so there are all of these hidden costs to it, and carbon tax is one very interesting way of identifying one of this hidden cost and really putting a real cost to it by saying that your product is not just
true.
500 rupees, it's 500 rupees plus 4,000 liters of water plus X amount
exactly,
of carbon.
right?
And that's what's so incredibly exciting of the capabilities that blockchain has. One, to tell us that these are all of the costs that are actually going behind your product, and the second is to make sure that you pay for it. And
Garvita, tell me something, but like, I'm not a cynic at all, but let's be a little real about it, right? Today, okay, if you were to buy a product, right, and the same product one is 500 rupees and the other is 1,000, right, because the one person is more transparent and says this is the cost, it's more expensive, we are offsetting the damage which we might be doing while making this product by planting more trees, right, hence we're charging you 1,000 rupees. And at the other side, there's another brand which doesn't really care, right, they're proper consumerism wala behavior, which is like the word, right, and saying ki bhai hamara product is 500 rupees, it's the same quality as your baju wale ka product, right? Do you see this consumer mind shift changing in the next generation, in amidst your peer group, where people realize that we have to make the decision, we have to make that switch? Do you really see that happening, or it's and this is what I wanted to guide a conversation to the next question, right, where the whole thing about Bill Gates happening, and we were discussing that, right, is caring about the world anyway a thing only of the privileged, right? Like, do you have to be rich to start caring about the world, or can you be a normal person and still make a difference?
Oh, okay. So there's a lot of layers to this, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is, personally also, right, the journey has been more than 7 years now, and I know how hard it has been to convince a lot of my friends that the environment matters, and spending X rupees extra, right, like instead of taking a polythene bag which was free and taking a cloth bag that was 7 rupees is going to make a huge difference, is a challenge, and I'm not going to deny it. And there's a long way we still have to go. But I want to acknowledge that there's a long way that we have come also, right? And the way that I like to convince people is by saying that if you buy a plastic bag, you're going to throw it away. But if you buy a cloth bag, you're going to use it for life. And you don't have to ever buy a bag again. And so that's sort of the difference, right? So if your plastic bag costs you 2 rupees and your cloth bag costs you 7 rupees, you can use that cloth bag another 100 times and pay only 7 rupees for it, versus you will pay 200 rupees to get, a plastic bag all of those 100 times, and you've already saved like so much money in the process. And that's again something that we don't even see, because in front of us, we just see the 2 rupees and the 7 rupees. We're not seeing the 7 rupees and the 200 rupees. And so that's sort of a perspective that I like to bring when I'm trying to convince my friends that, or even sometimes myself, because we've also grown up with a particular mindset. It's hard to change it if it's convincing my friends, my family, my parents, and of course on days myself as well, right? That's, I think, a beautiful comparison to sort of observe that the world in. And again, rolling back, blockchain gives you the capability and the visibility of it. It will give me the visibility of what will happen to my cloth bag after I dispose it. It will give me the visibility of what will happen to my plastic bag after I dispose it, right? And then eventually to know that the impact, right, even if it's disposing plastic into the ecosystem, is going to go into the soil, which is the groundwater is going to seep into the ocean. That ocean is going to be water consumed by animals, or it's going to be water consumed by our plants. This is all entering our food only, and then we are reconsuming that. So when you buy plastic, don't think of it as you have purchased something that is not good for the environment. Think of it as you are eating plastic. The day you buy plastic to sort of for whatever purpose, you're actually ending up saying that I'm going to consume this, which is so incredibly unhealthy for us as an ecosystem itself. So that was to answer the first part. I forgot the rest of your question.
No, so the second part, right? And as we are slowly coming to the end of this conversation, I wanted to ask you, right? Like the whole Bill Gates aspect, right? Like, do you have to be rich to actually want to make a difference? You have people who are earning all their lives, and then suddenly that philanthropic thing comes into their lives later when they feel that money has probably not added too much to the purpose of their lives. So like, do you have to be rich to be able to change the world for better?
I think you don't have to be rich at all to change the world. You can change the world no matter who you are or where you come from. I actually go back to the roots of India itself, and a lot of practices that we have as an ecosystem and as a community are so incredibly sustainable. If you go back and see the way food was cooked, the way food was grown, the way clothes are woven, the way jewelry is made, all of it is so incredibly sustainable, right? And all of these are not being created, innovated, designed, or produced, or manufactured, or sourced, or even brought to us by incredulously rich people. It's the simple people, it's those humble backgrounds, and all of the answers honestly lie with us already of the change that we can possibly make and that we need to make. And I think that is sort of the beauty of everyone a change maker. I love to say this, right? In a world where change is the only constant, we're now in the constant need of change makers. And each and every person needs to be that change maker, right? Each and every person needs to do their bit. The world was not created by one or two people or a particular community of people. The world was created by everyone. It was created by engineers, lawyers, doctors, children, adults, our older wisdomous grandparents. It was created by everyone together, right? It was not just this one community. So why do we expect just that one community to solve all of the problems? If we want to solve these issues, we need to come together as a whole to do our bit. I actually talk a lot about this when it comes to sustainable education. There's a lot of this speculation around should there be a course on environment? Should there be like a degree on environment? It's great to have it, right? I think that's important. But I think it's equally important to have one chapter on environment in every subject. So if I'm studying engineering, I should have a chapter on engineering and sustainability. How can I use my engineering and technical skills to drive sustainability, which is basically what we've spoken about in this entire conversation? How should I, as a lawyer, understand environmental law better and support, be a more ethical lawyer in my journey of practicing? And
that's
so
a whole podcast in itself, Garvita. Where every episode is about sustainability in different fields, right?
Let's do it. But
yeah, we should do it. I'll definitely talk to the IVM guys about this.
but
Our
what it
producer's
does
looking at
is,
me saying, not more work, please.
but this is important work. This is important dialogues.
Of course.
Um,
No, I get that, Garvita, completely.
Yeah.
But like, we're nearly reaching the hour mark. I wanted to talk about you, right? So we spoke about sustainability, we spoke about blockchain and sustainability, we spoke about sustainability and blockchain. Now coming to climate tech, right? Like, I know you're very passionate about climate tech, and you've been in the water conservation space for 7 years now, right? So, and you've been working in something around rivers and NFTs, and also virtual water, and of course I'm sure you want to do a lot of other stuff. Tell us more, right? Like, tell us a little more about what is this virtual water and what are you doing with rivers and NFTs.
Yes, of course. So virtual water is also called hidden water. We've actually spoken about it in the episode briefly, but let me, dive a little deeper into it. It's the water that is not directly visible to the naked eye, but it is consumed in the production of every product that we see. Now, what happens is each and every one of us has a water footprint, right? Which is the average amount of water that we consume. So let me ask you, Eka.
Tell me.
I mean, we've had these conversations, so you would know the answer. But like before you knew the answer, what did you think the answer was, right? And let our audience also take a moment to think of it. How much water do you think you consume on a daily basis?
So basically, everyone says you should drink some 6 to 8 glasses of water, right, every day to stay healthy. So I'm sure one does that. But yeah, I get your question, right? Like, one is consciously, but subconsciously, everything which we are doing has a water footprint, right? Like, right, yes. What you mentioned, I think jeans taking, like, I should stop wearing jeans, right? Like, with 4,000 liters of water being utilized. So I get it, right? And I think it's really important because people are not really aware of consumption, which happens passively, right?
Exactly. So what if we could enable technology that allows them to learn of all of this passive consumption of water, right? Whether it is the water that is consumed in the manufacturing of their product, whether it's the water that is consumed in, the product actually reaching their homes, the product that is the water or even the energy that is consumed in just the life cycle of the product, right? Every time I wash my jeans, also I'm consuming water, and jeans in general consume more water than, normal products. And then telling the user that, these are the stages where your product is consuming more energy and is having a negative impact on the environment. So why don't you take XYZ steps to actually improve it? And then you sort of, allow them to measure that whole process again after they've made those little changes. And the goal is not to do things that are very difficult, but just to do things that are a little different. And that's what can make, a huge difference. It's as simple as something that we've created, the Y-Waste app, that allows you to calculate your water footprint and then in turn teaches you to save at least 100 liters of water every day, right? It's just this one very simple thought, very simple product, very simple idea, but has this, far-reaching impact. You also mentioned the whole rivers and NFTs project. It's just something that I've been... Yeah, it's something that I've been thinking of for a long time, right? And I think the goal was, how do you get more and more people involved in understanding the problems that exist in our communities, right? Especially with respect to water. So today, when we think of the water narrative, right, and when you think of the water crisis, what's the first thing that comes to mind? The first thing that comes to mind is, a woman who's walking miles just to, get a pot of water, a household that doesn't have access to water, or a river that is incredibly polluted. That's what comes to mind, because that's what we're told is the water crisis, right? But what we aren't told is the water crisis exists because we in urban communities have overconsumed this resource. And the goal is to make every person more and more empathetic towards wanting to make a difference, or simply understanding the water crisis, doing their bit, contributing to positive projects that are making a difference in this ecosystem, understanding the root of our resources, which is the rivers, helping rejuvenate it, right? If you go and if you contribute towards cleaning a particular water body, you're going to want to protect it all your life because you've contributed towards it and you've done your best to ensure that it stays clean. Unfortunately, all of the the entire water ecosystem is so deeply interconnected today. Every single water body in our world, by the way, this is a fact, is connected to each other. So you could be in the Pacific Ocean and it will be somehow connected to Kaveri, because the water networks are so deep rooted and so interconnected, right? So every water body in the world today is connected to one another. Hence, it is so important for us not just to, ensure the cleanliness or even, the pristinity of just one or two, but all of them. But of course, it starts with those few, right? And can we bring in individuals who've always wanted to contribute towards this and support individuals who are doing some incredible work to protect these ecosystems, to rejuvenate these, water ecosystems, and to realize that, the water that we are cleaning is for ourselves. It's for, communities around us. I think that there's nothing more I would see moving a person to, want to be a part of something like this. And so if you held, this chunk of something that you were a part of building, creating, cleaning, you're going to want to protect it for life. I mean, if I clean if I clean my computer screen, I want it to stay clean for a long time.
Coming to our last question of this conversation, this is what I ask all our guests, right? 10 years down the line, right? And especially in the space of environmentalists, conservation, etc. Can people make careers in this space? What are the how does one get started? What are the jobs which will definitely flourish in this environment, climate tech, climate change space over the next decade? And what are the jobs which one should get out of or should not get into right now because they'll probably be obsolete in a couple of years?
I think it's hard for me to pinpoint what will be obsolete. I'm very new into the working ecosystem myself, but I think for sure one thing I can say is there's a lot of opportunity, and especially, my dad was saying this the other day. I think what we know of blockchain is just 1%. There's still 99% of it left to discover. And I thought that was really powerful. And that just shows that already if with 1%, there's so many people involved in the ecosystem. There's so many people who are able to make a difference, make money out of it, and create a job and a life out of it. That's just 1% of it. There's a whole 99% of it out there. So the opportunity exists, and the opportunity is now, right? It's like joining Facebook in in its early days, right? That's something that you can really parallel it to. And second, knowing that the ecosystem that we are living in currently, right, which is a space where we need to move towards better. Towards a more sustainable future. Having individuals and youth today who are conscious towards the planet, driving innovative and new technologies like blockchain is exactly what we need. Because we need people who are aware of the problems, were sold that they exist, right? And then to utilize all of these newer, spaces, ages, and technologies to actually make it happen. In terms of job opportunities, I've actually spent a lot of time learning from and reading up things on the product folks. I think they're a very incredible community that are enabling a lot of learning in this ecosystem. There's various other communities as well. I know of a lot of MNCs who have created, blockchain divisions in itself that are actually, innovating, creating all of the things, a lot of the things that we just spoke about and a lot more to, power their, supply chains better, to power their own, the economy of their own companies much, much better, right? And so there is, I'd say, just 1% of opportunity consumed and 99% of it still left to explore, and a space where people should definitely spend a little bit of time every day, if not a lot, to start with, because it's the future. And it's like, I know I studied tech because everything that we consume, everything that we use around us is built on technology, and I wanted to understand what I'm using and consuming and doing. And that's going to be the future, right? If you want to be curious about how the future is going to work, it's here, right? And very big testament to also the name of your pod.
I was saying whether should I plug my name again. But thank you so much, Garvita. And this has been so incredible. I'm sure a lot of our listeners would have learned so much. And, I wanted, this conversation can probably go on, and probably we'll definitely have you back in the future. I asked Roshan Abbas something in our episode, which you've also seen. And he said something beautiful. He's like, when I asked him about metaverse, and we didn't speak too much about the metaverse right now, he said something beautiful. He's like, metaverse to aayega, dekh lenge, but right now the main concern is the universe, right? Like, and our planet, and that's something which we should definitely care about. And on that note, thank you so much for taking our time. And also, this is what we joked about, right? Like, you're the first guest who's not in the studio because we wanted to keep our carbon footprint less and to ensure that we record in a very sustainable way. Thank you so much, Garvita. It's been a pleasure to have you, and see you soon.
No, thank you so much for having me and for pushing me to think a little differently. I know this is not what I usually talk about, but it's something that I've been spending so much time with. So it was great to share some of those learnings and thoughts, and of course jam with you on some of these very interesting topics.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. And that was such a fascinating episode of Future Proofing presented by Intel vPro, built for business. If you learned from this episode, if you really liked this episode, please like it, share it, comment. Don't forget to rate us. And we also have some good news. We've been running this NFT contest, so do participate in it. For more information, you can catch IVM Podcasts across all social networks at IVM Podcasts. You can catch me at Ekalavya on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and I'm at Ekalavya B on Twitter. See you on our next episode.